Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. I am recording this share on the morning of Tzom Gedalia, the day after Rosh Hashanah, so I'm going to wish everybody a Gemar Chesima Tova, a good Gebencht Yar. You won't hear this share until tomorrow, but I hope everybody had a wonderful Rosh Hashanah, and hopefully all of the tefillas were niskabel, and we were mamlich the Rabbeinu Shalom on ourselves, and we reawaken in ourselves the feeling of servitude to the Rabbeinu Shalom, the feeling of that the Rabbeinu Shalom is the Melech, and every mitzvah that we do, we're doing because we're serving the Melech, and we're a Mamleches Kaihanim v'Goy Kadosh, and our purpose here in the world is like we say in Kriya Shema, Vayim Shemaya Tishmuel Mitzvah Yisaya Asher Anoichi Mitzaveh Eschem Hayom La'avas Hashem Elokeichem U'La'avdoi. We're here to serve Bari Olam, and the gratitude for all of the everything that the Rabbeinu Shalom bestows upon us, all of the good that the Rabbeinu Shalom does for us. The Rabbeinu Shalom is a meitiv. Now we were mamlich, the Rabbeinu Shalom, and now we're ready to go ahead for another year of avodas Hashem and limud HaTorah. So on that note, we are holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav, and we'll be learning today Mirat Hashem Daf Kuf Vav Amid Beis, but we pick up on Kuf Vav Amid Aleph all the way at the end of Siman Taf Reish Lamed Tes. In Sif Ches, we left out one Mishnah Berurah. It's a lengthy Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Mem Ches, which is going to take up the majority of Kuf Vav Amid Beis. So let's just read the words of the Mechaber here in Sif Ches. This is a short one-sentence Mechaber, but it has such vast repercussions on how we are noig on Sukkos. The Mechaber says, Noagu, the Arminig is, She'ein mevarchem ala sukkah ela b'shas achila. We make the bracha of leishev basukkah. When we sit down to eat a meal, when we're kaveh suda in the sukkah, when we go to eat in the sukkah, that's when we make the bracha of leishev basukkah. And the Ramah said, V'hachi nohug. Now, we already did Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Mem Vav and Ois Katan Mem Zayin. In Ois Katan Mem Vav, the Mishnah Berurah told me that really Al Pidin, what comes out from the Gemara and from Roiv of the Rishonim, most notably the Rambam and the Rif, what would seem the Psak Halacha that would seem to flow from the Sugya, and certainly from the Rambam and the Rif, every time you go into your sukkah, Teshvu Kein Taduru, spending time in your sukkah, using the sukkah as your living space, is a mitzvah. It's not just eating in the sukkah that's a mitzvah. You go out to the sukkah to learn, it's a mitzvah. You go to the sukkah to shmooze with somebody, it's a mitzvah. You go into the sukkah to relax, it's a mitzvah. Whatever you do in the sukkah, whenever you go out to the sukkah to spend time in the sukkah, you're being mekayim a mitzvah. And then it would seem, Medina de Gemara and the Psak of the Rif and the Psak of the Rambam is, every time you go out to the sukkah, you should make a bracha of leishev basukkah. Now, if you leave the sukkah just to go get the salt, or you leave the sukkah to just get another sefer to bring it out to the sukkah, that's not a hefsek. So when you go back to the sukkah, you wouldn't make another bracha. But let's say you were in the sukkah, and you were learning in the sukkah for an hour, you made a leishev basukkah, no food. You went out to the sukkah to learn. So you made a leishev, and you were sitting there for an hour. Then you left to go daven mincha. That's a Yitzia Gemurah. You went out. You left the sukkah. You went out. Now you came back. You make another leishev. Then you go out because you have to go run a few errands and you have to go shopping. Then you come back. You make another leishev basukkah. Like the Mishnah Berurah said, afilu meya pa'amim b'yayim. You could make a leishev basukkah 100 times a day. Every time you leave the sukkah with the Yitzia Gemurah, every time you leave the sukkah, when it's not that your das is that you're coming right back, you left, Yitzia Gemurah, I left to go take care of something. Then when you come back, you would make another leishev. And it has nothing to do with whether you're going to eat or whether you're not going to eat. Just using the sukkah, living in the sukkah, you would make a leishev basukkah. That's the shita of the Rambam and the Rif. However, in the middle of Ois Katan Mem Vav, the Mishnah Berurah told us, this is the Mechaber over here. The Mechaber told us, we don't seem to follow the Rif and the Rambam. Instead, we seem to follow the Shita of the Rabbeinu Tam. The shita of the Rabbeinu Tam is that the ikar mitzvah of sukkah somehow is the achila. The ikar kvius is the achila. I'll read it to you very, very nicely from the Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan writes over the shita of the Rabbeinu Tam in a beautiful way. He writes like this: Ha'umnam Rabbeinu Tam pasak she'ein tzarech levarech leishev basukkah rak b'shas hasuda. The psak of the Rabbeinu Tam is that we only make a leishev basukkah when we go into the sukkah to have a suda. V'zel lashon HaTorah, and the Torah quotes the Rabbeinu Tam, and this is the lashon of the Torah. V'Rabbeinu Tam piresh keven she'ikor kvius she'adam oise b'sarech hasukkah hi ha'achila. The main kvius, the kvius that we make in the sukkah, when we really sit down with the kvius, is the suda. We go out to eat in the sukkah. Therefore, says the Rabbeinu Tam, mevarech al ha'achila, we make a bracha when we go to do the achila, when we go to eat in the sukkah. That's when we make a leishev basukkah, upater, and with that leishev basukkah we pater kol hadvarim, everything else, afilu hashina, even sleeping in the sukkah, shehi chamura me'achila, which the Torah says, in a sense, sleeping in the sukkah is treated more stringently than eating in the sukkah. Because think about it. Shaharei oichlen arai chutzala, we're allowed to eat outside of the sukkah if we're eating an achilas arai. When we eat a snack, we eat it outside the sukkah. But ve'ein yeshenin arai chutzala, but we learned that you can't even have a shinas arai. You're not even supposed to sleep a little cat nap outside of the sukkah. So you see that in a sense, sleeping in the sukkah is treated more stringently than eating in the sukkah, and yet the bracha of the leishev that we make b'shas achila, according to the Rabbeinu Tam, it paters everything else. It paters even sleeping in the sukkah. Afilu hachi kevin shahachila ikar, since the achila is the ikar kvius, paiteres hashar, it paters all other activities in the sukkah. Ad kan l'shainai, that's the lashon of the Torah, quoting the Rabbeinu Tam. V'chein kasvu harash v'hamordechai b'shmai dekevan shekala dvarim heim tfeilim laha'achila. Since everything else that we do in the sukkah is considered a tuffle to eating, k'may hatil, like relaxing, v'ashina, and sleeping, lefikach kulam niftarim beberachas ha'achila, everything is patered by the bracha of the leishev that we make b'shas ha'achila. V'kosvu she'noagim k'Rabbeinu Tam, and they will write that we're noyeg like Rabbeinu Tam. When do we make a leishev? We make a leishev by achila. We don't make a leishev by anything else. Ulechein Rabbeinu Abeis Yosef b'sif ches kasav nagu she'en mevarchen ala sukkah ela b'shas ha'achila ad kan l'shainai. That's the meaning of this mechaber here in Sif Ches. When the mechaber says that we make a bracha b'shas ha'achila, this is what the mechaber means. The mechaber means to paskin like the Rabbeinu Tam, that the only time we make a bracha is on achila, and we pater everything else. For Rabbeinu Ramah Haisef Laimar v'hachi nog, and the Ramah seconds what the mechaber said, and the Ramah says, indeed, v'hachi nog. Our HaShulchan points out, v'lo yadati ma Haisef al divrei Rabbeinu Abeis Yosef. Now, our HaShulchan questions what exactly the Ramah was coming to add to the Beis Yosef. We usually don't find that the Ramah just agrees with the mechaber without adding anything, and he suggests later on maybe a certain chiluk in halacha between the mechaber and the Ramah, or an addition that the Ramah might be making, but we're not going to go into that. Okay, so here we have this very basic machlokes, the Rambam and the Rif, and the Rabbeinu Tam and others. According to the Rambam and the Rif, every time we go into the sukkah to use the sukkah, as long as we made a hefsek from the last time we were in the sukkah, we left the sukkah with what they call a yitzia gemura. Like I said, maybe we went out to go shopping, so that's certainly a yitzia gemura. It's not like going into the house to get the salt. If you left the sukkah with the yitzia gemura, then every time you would come back to the sukkah, you would make another bracha on the sukkah, because again, you're going out to the sukkah, and all the time that you spend in the sukkah, you're being mekayim the mitzvah of yeshiva sukkah, of Teshu Kain Teduru. That's the Rambam and the Rif. And on the other hand, we have the Rabbeinu Tam, which is what we're used to, which is when do we make a leishev? We make a leishev when we eat in the sukkah. Everything else that we're doing in the sukkah, it all gets patterned by the bracha of the leishev that we make when we eat in the sukkah. Now, that opens up a lot of very interesting questions, and we're going to deal with some of that here in Ois Katan Memches. So let's pick up with Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Memches, very bottom of the Mishnah Berurah on Kovav Amud Aleph. The Mechaber says we make a bracha b'shas achila. So the first halacha that the Chavetz Chaim tackles is, what if you're not going to eat? Says the Mishnah Berurah, v'hamis'ane basukkah. Let's say you're fasting. Well, why would you be fasting on Yom Tov? Even on Chol Hamoed, you're not supposed to fast. But let's say somebody has to make a tainis chaloim. Somebody had a very bad dream, and it's a dream that he has to be mevatel with a tainis chaloim. So he's fasting. You're allowed to fast a tainis chaloim even on Shabbos. You have to fast another fast to get kapara for the fact that you fasted on Shabbos, but you could fast a tainis chaloim on Shabbos. So here you have somebody who's fasting on Sukkos. Or somehow he knows that he's not going to be kaveh suda today in the sukkah. Let's say it's Chol Hamoed. So strictly speaking, he doesn't really have the same chiyuv of suda. We did learn in Hilchas Chol Hamoed that there's a chiyuv of the samachta b'chagecha, there's a chiyuv of simcha on Chol Hamoed, but doesn't rise to the same level as the Suda of Yom Tov. So let's say somebody knows he's not being Kaveh Suda, or maybe he just Pashut doesn't have bread. He's not going to be Kaveh Suda not on bread, not on Pasabah B'Kistin. So there is going to be no Achila in the Sukkah today that's going to allow me to make a leishev, and with that leishev, pater all the other time that I'm going to spend in the Sukkah. In that case, says the Chavetz Chaim, Lekule Alma, then everybody would agree, even Rabbeinu Tam would agree, Kol Emas Sheyetze Yitzia Gemura, every time you leave the sukkah with the Yitzia Gemura, Chayiv Levarech, you got to make a bracha. Dedavka Kishoichel Pasvir Luhulanu Paiskim, Shemevarach al Iker Chiyav Asukkah Poiter Kol Advarim Atfelim. The Rabbeinu Tam that we saw presented so beautifully in the Aruch HaShulchan, what the Rabbeinu Tam said was, since you're gonna make a leishev on your Kviyas Suda in the Sukkah, and the Kviyas Suda in the Sukkah is the Iker Kviyas in the Sukkah, so you make a bracha on your Achila and you pater everything else. But if you're not going to have a Suda, if you're not going to have a Kviyus of a Suda in the Sukkah, that to make a leishev on, to pater everything else, so now what? Now you're just going to go use your sukkah and be mekayim all the mitzvahs in the sukkah without making a bracha? Even the Rabbeinu Tam would say that doesn't work. So then you got to cover your usage of the sukkah with brachas. And since you're not patering it with a bracha on a suda, every time you go in and out, you're going to have to make another bracha. And he brings this down from the Taz and other Achrayim. And he doesn't leave any room over here for argument to Mishnah Berurah. So let's just recap what this means. Let's say it's Chol Hamoed Sukkos. We're coming now very close to Sukkos. Let's say it's Chol Hamoed Sukkos. You got up in the morning and you went to shul. You came back from shul and, I could even make it more difficult. You got up in the morning and you went out to the sukkah to shake your lulav and esrog. You want to make the bracha on the lulav and esrog in the sukkah. You used the sukkah. Did you eat anything? No. You went to shul. You came home. You're going to sit down and you're going to eat breakfast, but you're on a diet. So you decided that you're not washing and you're not eating anything that's chayiv in sukkah. You're going to have an omelet. You're going to have a beautiful omelet with some hash browns, some potatoes, and a salad. Well, no chayiv sukkah there. That's shahakos and ha'adamas. So far, there's no chayiv sukkah over here. Okay, then after your breakfast, you leave the sukkah. Then a half hour later, you decide, you know what, I want to go out to the sukkah. I'm going to learn Mishnah Berurah. I'm going to chazer Mishnah Berurah. I'm going to chazer Hilchos Sukkah. So you go out to the sukkah, maybe with a coffee, and you're going to be in the sukkah now for an hour learning. You use the sukkah for an hour and you learn. Then you leave the sukkah and you're going out shopping with your wife. Then you come back after your shopping trip and you decide to have a tea outside in the sukkah, no mezainis. You go out to the sukkah with your wife, and you sit in the sukkah with your wife for a half hour, and you sip your tea together, and you shmooze together. Then you go out from the sukkah, and you go to daven mincha. And that's also Yitzia Gemurah. Now you come back to the sukkah, and it's time to learn the daf. And you're going to learn the daf in the sukkah. And then after learning the daf for an hour in the sukkah, you go out. Then you come back out to the sukkah, and now it's time you're going to have supper in the sukkah, but you're not washing and you're not having a mezainis, you're having a steak and fries, okay? We spoke about a steak and fries. We said there are those that say your kaveh suda, you should eat it in the sukkah, but you're certainly not going to make a leishev. So you've gone into your sukkah how many times today, and you've used your sukkah how many times today, and not once did you make a leishev. This is the scenario that the Mishnah Berurah is describing here. The Mishnah Berurah is saying, what the Rabbeinu Tam would tell you not to make a leishev? Even the Rabbeinu Tam would tell you have to make a leishev basukkah. The only chiluk between the Rabbeinu Tam and the Rambam and the Rif, the Rabbeinu Tam says, hey yois, you're going to be kaveh suda in the sukkah, and you're going to make a leishev on your kviyah suda in the sukkah. So that leishev on your kviyah suda could pater the rest of the usage of the sukkah for the rest of the day. But over here, you're not making a kviyah suda. You're not making a leishev once. So you're going out to the sukkah, using the sukkah the whole day without a leishev basukkah? So says the Mishnah Berurah, even according to the Rabbeinu Tam, in the scenario that I just described to you, you would make a leishev every time you go use the sukkah and then leave with the Yitzia Gemurah. Dahainu, you get up in the morning and you want to make a berachah on lulav and esrog outside in the sukkah. So you're going outside to the sukkah to be mekayim a mitzvah of lulav and esrog. You're going to make a leishev. And then you're going to go and you're going to take lulav and esrog. Then you leave with the Yitzia Gemurah because you're going out to shul to daven chakras. Then you come back and you're going to go have breakfast in the sukkah. But I'm not eating anything that's chayiv in sukkah. But you got to make a leishev because you're eating breakfast in the sukkah. And you didn't pater it with a leishev at any point. So you're going to make a leishev. Then you leave your sukkah with the Yitzia Gemurah. You go out and you're out of the sukkah for an hour. And then you come back to Chazer Dirshu Mishnah Berurah with your coffee. You're going to make another leishev. Then you leave with the Yitzia Gemurah to go shopping. And then you come back to sit in the sukkah with your wife and have a tea. You're going to make another leishev. Then you leave and then you come back later to learn the daf. You're going to make another leishev. Then you leave to daven mincha, ma'ariv, whatever it is, and you come back to eat supper. You're going to make another leishev. Because in this scenario, you never had a leishev on a kviyah suda that would allow you to pater everything else. Fascinating. How many people think about this, right? Now, we saw in the previous year, I think I read to you, the Dirshu footnote number 50 on Kuv Vav Amud Aleph, who brings down that the Chazon Ish was noyeg like the Gra. The Chazon Ish was noyeg like the Gra, who actually paskined like the Rif and the Rambam. And they made a leishev taka every time that they went out to the sukkah, if they left with the Yitzia Gemurah in the middle. Okay, so here we have the first halacha that the Chavetz Chaim tackled over here in Ois Katan Memches, which I think to many people will be a huge chiddush. Now he brings down a Chai Yodam, that this Chai Yodam is negeya even when we pass, even when we pass like the Rabbeinu Tam, and even when we do have a Suda. The cause of a Chai Yodam, the Chai Yodam writes, Tehu adin kishiyotze yitzia gemura la'achar achila, v'choyzer v'nichnas, v'lo yoichal ad ha'erev, v'koydem ha'achila yitztarach oidapam lotzeis lebeis ha'knesses. Okay, what's this scenario? This scenario is like this. You went into the sukkah to have your Yom Tov Suda. You came home from shul, you went out to the sukkah to have your Yom Tov Suda, and you made a leishev by your Yom Tov Suda. Now, you leave your sukkah with the Yitzia Gemurah. So you went out to the sukkah, you made a Suda. At the end of the Suda, you benched. Okay. Now you benched, you went out, and you left the sukkah with a real Yitzia Gemurah. Maybe you're going out to the Bris Medrash to a shir. I don't know, whatever it is. But you left with the Yitzia Gemurah. Now you come back home, and you go out to the sukkah, and you're going to sit and learn in the sukkah for an hour. Okay, now, is this act of going out to the sukkah and learning for an hour out in the sukkah, is it attached to your earlier achila? No. You had an achila, you made a leishev by that kviyas suda, and then you left with the Yitzia Gemura. So now, when you come back to the sukkah to sit down to learn in the sukkah, it's not attached to the previous achila. Okay? Now, after you learn in the sukkah for an hour, you leave the sukkah again with the Yitzia Gemura. You go out to the Mismedrash to learn with a chavrusa. Now you're going to come back later, and you're going to have another suda, and you're going to make another leishev. But that middle period of time that you spent in the sukkah, it was not attached not to an achila before it, and not to an achila after it. The Chayyadam seems to say that according to the Rabbeinu Tam, let's take a look at Sharetzia and Ois Katan Tzadik Beis. Ois Katan Tzadik Beis, the Chavetz Chaim spells this out. Again, the scenario that he gave is, you had an achila with a leishev basukkah before, you had another achila with a leishev basukkah later, but in the middle, you had a period of yeshivas hasukkah that was not attached to either achila, because you had the earlier achila with a leishev, but then you left with the Yitzia Gemura, then you went back to the sukkah, but then you left the sukkah with another Yitzia Gemura, and then you had your later achila. So that middle period of time in the sukkah was not attached to an achila, not before and not after. In that case, the Chayyadam says, Yitztarech oidapam, I'm sorry, I'll read it inside in a minute. But in that case, the Chayyadam says, you would have to make a leishev in the middle. Why? So let's take a look here at the Sharetzianos Katan Tzadik Beis. The Ilav Hachi, he's going on, I'm doing this wrong. Let me read it inside of the Mishnah Berurah first. The Kasav HaChayyadam, the Chayyadam writes, Tehu adin kishayatza Yitzia Gemura la'achar achila. If you left your sukkah with the Yitzia Gemura after your suda. So again, you had your first suda with a leishev, and then you left with the Yitzia Gemura. V'chayzer v'nichnas. And then later you came back into the sukkah in the afternoon. V'lo yoichal ado erev. And you're not going to eat another suda until the evening. V'koydem ha'achila. And before you eat that later suda in the evening, yitztarich oidapam lotzeis l'beis hakneses. You're going to leave the sukkah with another Yitzia Gemura, let's say to go to shul. So again, you had an achila with a leishev, you had a Yitzia Gemura, then you had yeshivas hasukkah, and then you left with another Yitzia Gemura to go to shul, and you're not going to eat again until later. Says the Chayyadam, the bazeh gamken l'kuli alma tzarich levarech. The Chayyadam says, here also, even the Rabbeinu Tam would hold that you have to make a bracha in that middle time period. And in Ois Katan Tzadik Beis in the Sharetzia, the Chavetz Chaim explains, he says, the Ilav Hachi, he's going on the fact that after that middle time period of sitting in the sukkah, you're going to leave with the Yitzia Gemura before you have your evening suda. If it wasn't that way, let's say you would have your early suda with a leishev, a Yitzia Gemura, then you would go back to the sukkah, but then, you would stay in the sukkah and you would not have another Yitzia Gemura until you have your night meal. If that was the scenario, then the Rabbeinu Tam would agree that you do not make a bracha. Then l'das Rabbeinu Tam, desvirle da achila shehi ikar kviyas paiteres kalat tfelim la, tahainu yeshiva v'shein v'til, bein shelifnei ha'achila ubein shela'achar ha'achila ad ha'achila shneya. What the Chayyadam is telling you is, the way to understand the Rabbeinu Tam is, the berachah the leishev that you make by a kviyas suda in the sukkah could pater all other activities in the sukkah as long as those activities are attached to at least one end of an achila. Dahainu, if you go out for your Yom Tov Suda and you have a Kviyas Suda in the sukkah and you make a leishev, and then you stay in the sukkah for the next 3 hours and you just go in and out of the house, derech harai, to get the salt or to get a sefer or to this or to that, all of that is patered by the leishev. Now, let's say that you made by the morning Suda. Now, let's say you made the morning Suda and then you left with the Yetzia Gemura. And now you go back out to the sukkah and you're going to learn in the sukkah. If you're going to learn in the sukkah all the way till the night to the night Suda, then the Rabbeinu Tam holds that the leishev by the night Suda will pater the yeshiva sukkah that came before it. So you see, the Chayotim is saying that according to the Rabbeinu Tam, a leishev by a kviyas Suda could pater use of the sukkah that came before it, if it was attached to it, or that comes after it, if it was attached to it. But if you have a yeshiva sukkah in the middle of the day that was not attached to a kviyas Suda before or a kviyas Suda after, then the Chayotim suggests that that's not patered by the leishev that you made by the kviyas Suda, because it's totally detached from the Suda that you made the leishev by. So it's such a fascinating Mishnah Berurah. Now, you'll ask me, halacha l'maisa, because I'm not holding in the sugya 100%, my first comment to you is go ahead and ask your Rav. Me personally, in these scenarios, I always make sure to take cake out to the sukkah with me. So if I go out to the sukkah for my Suda in the morning, and I have a kviyas Suda and I make a leishev, and then I leave the sukkah with the Yetzia Gemura, and then I'm going out later to the sukkah to learn, I bring cake with me. I bring pasa babakistin, at least, and I eat yoser, ma'at yoser mikabetza of pasa babakistin, and I make a leishev on that, and I learn in the sukkah. Otherwise, you're getting very dangerous over here, because it's not only the Rambam and the Rif. Even according to the Rabbeinu Tam, if you have a yeshiva sukkah that's not attached to any kviyas Suda, which happens, I think, quite a bit, you really have a shiloh whether or not you have to make a leishev. So I go out to the sukkah, bring cake. Yeah, it's not very dietetic, so if you want to bring some whole wheat pretzels, bring some whole wheat pretzels. But I try to make sure, or I try not to leave the sukkah, and to make sure that the yeshiva sukkah is attached to a Suda, either before or after. But this is very tricky. There's a Dirshu footnote here, footnote number 54, that goes into this a little bit. V'chein mi shenichnas lilmoid basukkah b'lo achila lifnei kain oila achar mikain. Let's say somebody goes out to learn in the sukkah without, and it's not attached to an achila. That's what it means here. B'lo achila lifnei kain oila achar mikain. So again, you had your Yom Tov Suda, and then you left your sukkah with the Yetzia Gemura, and now middle of the afternoon, you're going out to the sukkah to learn for an hour. And when you finish learning, you're going to leave your sukkah with the Yetzia Gemura. So it's not attached to an achila on either end. Mamish the scenario of the Chayotim. Das HaGoyin Reb Nissi Karelitz, Zechat Levracha, sheyavarich b'shas knisasa, that you should make a berachah of a leishev when you go out to learn. Now he says an interesting thing. Achim hu loymid ba be'iyun, but if it's a potter min sukkah, that could be tricky. Or let's say my yeshiva bachrim, they come home for the night Suda, and then after the night Suda, they leave the sukkah with the Yetzia Gemura, and they go out to the Mishnah Berurah to learn. Now they come home 3 hours later, and they want to go sleep in the sukkah. Chiv, sleeping in the sukkah, even Ishina Sarai. Now they're going to get up in the morning, and they're going to leave the sukkah, and they're going to go daven. So how is that sleeping in the sukkah connected to an achila? It's not. If you would eat the night Suda and stay in the sukkah, and then go to sleep in the sukkah, so fine. So according to Rabbeinu Tam, you patered the sleeping with the leishev that you made on the night Suda. But if you eat the night Suda, then you leave with the Yetzia Gemura to go to the Mishnah Berurah, so then the sleeping is not connected to the night Suda. It's not connected to the morning Suda. You're going to go out to daven. So what do? So Kasav HaMekar Chaim shetzarich levarich. The Mekar Chaim says, you tell you what you do. You make a berachah. V'chein das HaGoyin Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach Zatzal. He also says that you make a berachah. So this is very tricky. Okay. Let's go weiter here in the Mishnah Berurah. Next halacha. Another interesting halacha that comes up. People go sukkah hopping. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Umi shehayolech be'emtza su'udasai l'sukas chaveroi. You're sitting in the middle of your suda. You made a leishev by your suda. Now you hear beautiful singing coming from the sukkah next door. So you want to get up and you want to go over to the sukkah next door. Now when you get to the sukkah next door, even if they don't offer you a piece of cake, you're going, you're sitting down in the sukkah, you're schmoozing with your neighbors. That's a mitzvah of yeshiva sukkah. Do you make a leishev when you get to that sukkah? So Misha be'emtza sudas l'sukkahs chaveroi. Das hamagen Avram. Sha'afilu im haya b'daitoi b'shas bracha sheyelech be'emtza asuda l'sham v'loshav achakach miyad. Let's say you had this in mind when you made your leishev. You sat down to make your suda, you made a leishev basukkah. I have in mind that I'm going out to my neighbor and coming back. Afilu hachi tzarech levarech sham leishev basukkah. Magen Avram says you got to make a new leishev when you go to your friend's sukkah. The halicha have hefsek, because the walking from your sukkah to that sukkah, Magen Avram holds halicha is a hefsek. Famous Magen Avram in Hilchas Tzitzis. You make a bracha on your talis cotton when you put it on in the morning when you get up in your house, and then you go to shul. Do you make a bracha on your talis in shul? Magen Avram holds yes, because the halicha is a hefsek. So now if you're going to your neighbor's sukkah and he offers you a piece of cake, you got to make a leishev. Tzarech levarach sham leishev basukkah. Omnam, however, hu l'shitasei azel b'siman ches. This is the Magen Avram l'shitasei that halicha is a hefsek. Aval v'masha kasavdu sham d'das kama achreidim d'halicha lo yev hefsek. There are many achreidim that disagree with the Magen Avram, and they hold that going from your sukkah to your friend's sukkah, the halicha is not a hefsek. So then, im haya b'daita ein tzarech levarach. So if you had in mind when you made your leishev in your sukkah, you had in mind, I'm going to my friend's sukkah also. So if you hold that halicha is not a hefsek, so then you don't need a new leishev. Usavik brachas lahakol, Lushay Srad says, since we say savik brachas lahakol, don't make another bracha. But that's only if you had in mind when you made your leishev that in the middle of your suda you're going to your friend's sukkah. But if you didn't have in mind, if you made a leishev at the beginning of your suda and you had no idea that you're going to leave in the middle and go to your friend's sukkah, you go out to another sukkah, they offer you a piece of cake, you have to make a leishev. Another halacha. V'im shachach levarech leishev basukkah ad shehiskal lecha. You came home, you're tired, you came home to have a suda, you made kiddush, you forgot to make a leishev, you washed, you sat down, you ate challah, it's in the middle of the suda, you're up to the third course of the suda, and you just realized you never made a leishev. What do you do? It says the Mishnah Berurah, Yevarach achakach al ma sheroitz alecha. Make a leishev now on whatever you're going to continue eating. Do you have to eat another kazayas of challah, another yoser, ma'at yoser b'kabeya? That's the shear during the rest of Sukkot, not on the first night. Do you have to eat a little bit more than a beya of challah? Mishnah Berurah does not say so. Mishnah Berurah says, Yevarech achakach al ma sheroitz alecha. Make a leishev now on whatever you're still going to eat. Va'afil ochel kvar, and even if you already finished eating, uberach berkas hamazayin, and you benched. So you hear what's going on? You sat down to eat your suda, you forgot to make a leishev, you ate your whole suda, you benched, and somebody looks up and says, did we ever make a leishev? And you realize you never made a leishev? Yachal levarech. Mishnah Berurah says 100% make a bracha. Shagama yeshiva in a mitzvah. Because again, remember, according to the Rambam and the Rif, just sitting in the sukkah, you make a bracha of a leishev. And certainly in this case where you had a kviyas suda, the me'achil of elech calls man sheyoshev have yakol kviyas echad. I think what the Mishnah Berurah is telling you here is, even according to the Rabbeinu Tam, this is part of the kviyas achila. And this leishev that you make now will pater all the other use of the sukkah. Nevertheless, kol shadayin leberach berkas hamazon. Even though I'm telling you, you can make the leishev even after benching. If you didn't bench yet, yevarech, make a leishev v'yoichal ma'at, and eat something. He doesn't even tell you that you have to eat something that's chayim in sukkah. He just eat something. Let's say somebody made kiddush the night of Sukkot, and he started eating. So somebody closed the shlach and erev Yom Tov. He came home Yom Tov night. He went out to the sukkah. He made kiddush. He made a leishev. He starts eating, and he realizes the shlach wasn't opened. Mishnah Berurah says you should eat another kazayis and make another leishev. Because the first leishev was made when the sukkah wasn't a sukkah. But you certainly don't have to make Kiddush over again, because what does Kiddush have to do with a leishev? You could make Kiddush in the house. You don't make another shechiyanu either. As far as the shechiyanu, we said there's two reasons you make a shechiyanu. There's a shechiyanu on the Yom Tov, you can make that shechiyanu even on the house, in the house. The shechiyanu on the sukkah, so you might say, well, it wasn't a sukkah, I was sitting and the shlach was closed. Yeah, but remember, we learned this earlier. Really, Meikar Adin, you could make the shechiyanu on the sukkah 2 weeks before sukkah when you're building the sukkah. So kolshken shemahani bazeh mashabirach kishayo alet and stumin. So certainly you could make it when you're in the sukkah with the shlach closed. Okay, very fascinating Mishnah Berurah. I would urge everybody really to make sure, you should chazer everything. But certainly you should chazer Sif Ches over here in Siman Tov Reish Lamed Tes with Mishnah Berurah Mem Vav, Mem Zayin, and Mem Ches. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. But these are very yesodistic Mishnah Berurahs and very critical Mishnah Berurahs. Okay, now let's go to Siman Tov Reish Mem. Wow, that's Siman Tov Reish Lamed Tes. What a Siman. What a beautiful Siman. Every Siman is a beautiful Siman. But this somehow is a really, really a precious Siman. Okay, Tov Reish Mem. Mihei ma'patura b'yeshiva sukkah. Which people are exempt from the mitzvah of eating in the sukkah, of living in the sukkah? Uba yud seifim, and here we have 10 seifim, says the Mechaber Sif Aleph. Nashim, women, va'avadim, and evet kinani, ukitanim, minor children, paturim min sukkah, they are patur from the mitzvah of sukkah, says the Mishnah Berurah, Katan Aleph, Nashim, va'avadim, mishum dehevelei mitzvah sasei shazman grama, v'nashim paturais. These are time-sensitive mitzvahs. These are mitzvahs that have a time frame during which they have to be fulfilled. Any mitzvah say shazman grama, a woman is pater, and an eved is also pater. So, since these are mitzvahs that have specific times, it's a mitzvah say shazman grama, and women and avadim and pater. The eved dina ki isha. Uleinian bracha kisharaitin leishev basukkah. But let's say your wife does eat in the sukkah. Does she make a leishev? Well, that's based on the famous machlokes Rishonim, famous machlokes, the Rambam and I forgot. These are the Bali Tosfos. The Rambam holds that a woman does not make a bracha on a woman on a mitzvah where she's pater. According to the Rambam, a mitzvah seishaz man grama. If a woman goes to do that mitzvah, she does not make a bracha. Why? Because how could she say Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvaysa b'tzivanu? How could she say that she was commanded to fulfill it? She wasn't commanded to fulfill it. She's pater in this mitzvah, so how could she make a bracha? Other Rishonim hold that you can make a bracha. Why? Because when a woman goes to be mekayim a mitzvah that she's not mitzvah in, a mitzvah say shazman grama, the halacha is she still gets schar for being mekayim the mitzvah. Why is she getting that schar? She's getting that schar because the Rebbeinu Shalom was mitzvah, such a mitzvah on Klal Yisrael. Even though the mitzvah doesn't really apply to her, she's an einoi mitzvah v'oisa. She's not strictly speaking mitzvah in the mitzvah. She's pater because the mitzvah says shazman grama, but it still is a mitzvah on Klal Yisrael, and therefore when she's mekayim, she gets schar. Therefore, she could make a bracha to the Rebbeinu Shalom, and she could say, Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvaysav v'tzivanu, and you commanded us, meaning Klal Yisrael. Not me specifically, but you did command it as a mitzvah to Klal Yisrael. However, you cannot make a bracha, a man cannot be mitzi a woman in a bracha on a mitzvah that they're not mitzvah on, even if they don't know how to make the bracha by themselves, unless you're making the bracha for yourself. So you make kiddush, you make a leishev basukkah, you could be mitzi your wife because you're being mitzi yourself and you're being mitzi other men. But if your wife wanted you to be mitzi her in a leishev basukkah when you already made a leishev basukkah, then you can't do that because you can't be mitzi her because she doesn't have the chiyuv. We'll just finish this sif. Tumtum va'androgynous chayavim misafik. A tumtum is a person who his genitalia are covered over. So we don't know. We don't know, strictly speaking, physically, is he a man or a woman? Va'androgynous, and androgynous is a person who has the physical simanim both of a man and of a woman. chayavim misafik. They're chayiv in the mitzvah of sukkah because the mitzvah of sukkah is a mitzvah same in daraisa, and these people have a suffix. It's a suffix daraisa. Suffix daraisa we go lechumra. V'chein mishachetzia eved v'chetzia ben chayrin chayiv. So too somebody who is half an eved Kanani and half not. How is that possible? A person was an eved Kanani that belonged to two partners. One partner freed him. One partner gave him a get shichrur. So now he no longer is an eved Kanani to that person. So half of him has become a ben chayrin. As a ben chayrin, he's chayiv b'chol mitzvahs. But the other half of him is an eved Kanani and is only chayiv in mitzvahs like a woman. So he's patur in sukkah, which is a mitzvah seishas man grama. So these are cases of suffix, and therefore in these cases the people are chayiv. Ice cotton bays vandroginish leish Siman izachros v'nakvos chayavim misafik umikamakam lo yivarchu. But the tumtum, the androgynous, can't make a bracha. The bracha the rabbanon is fake. Not he can't. We're going to see he could, just like a woman could, but he's not chayiv to make the bracha. The point that the Mishnah Berurah is making is the mechaber says that they're chayavim misafik. They're chayiv in the mitzvah of sukkah misafik because it's a suffix daraisa, and suffix daraisa goes lechumra. As far as the bracha is a din derabanan, suffix bracha is lahakel. So the bracha the rabbanon is fake lekulu, could the le'el siman yuzayin siv beis, umikamakim im reitzim levarecha rishus biyadan, but they could make the bracha if they want to, deloi gri meisha, because they're no worse than a woman, and we said a woman could make a bracha. Okay, very good. We will stop over here. Everybody, I hope everybody takes advantage of a series made tshuva. We should all be striving to be on our best behavior and to be doing tshuva and to be Isaac in mitzvahs as much as we can. We want to have a gemar chasima tova, a good kibben shtiyar. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah, the mitzvah of limud HaTorah should be megan against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom should send Yeshua's refuahs and parnasa and shidduchim to all those in need, and we should be zeichet to see the bias gal tzedek b'meher v'yameinu. Amen. Be well.